Hello, everybody, and welcome. Nina, I will toss it to you as our moderator for today's session.
Good morning. Welcome to the Ohio Local History Alliance annual meeting. This session is called Self-Guided Tours and Alternatives to Historic House Museum Experiences. This morning, our presenters are Amanda Manahan, the Museum Educator and Tour Coordinator of the Oberlin Heritage Center, Margaret Piatt of the Piatt Castle Cheek, Melissa Karman, the Director of the Sutliff Museum, and Sarah Richardt, the Executive Director of the Kelton House Museum and Garden. This session is being recorded, so you can refer to it later, or if you want to watch it later. There is a chat option, so please use the chat if you want to speak amongst yourselves. If you have a specific question to any of our panelists, please use the Q&A option. So we're going to get started here, and I'm going to turn it over to our first presenter, Amanda.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks and welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us. Let me just get our screen up here. Okay. All right. My name is Amanda Manahan, and I am the Museum Education Tour Coordinator at the Oberlin Heritage Center. The session today is a result of a benchmarking project enacted by staff at the Oberlin Heritage Center, which was funded through support by the Ohio History Fund and Ohio Humanities back in spring of 2019 through this previous spring. The goal of the project was to help historic house museums in Ohio identify best practices for self-guided tours. And the need has been at the forefront of the minds of staff at the Oberlin Heritage Center for many years. And turning to self-guided tours is proving to be a necessity for many historic house museums. And of course, many of us are well aware of the variety of challenges presented to historic house museums and fulfilling visitor needs, such as from finances to human resources, to limitations on physical spaces and changing visitor expectations. Before we get started too much further, I would like to initiate a couple of poll questions for the participants. The first one is, does your institution currently offer a self-guided tour experience? Yes, no, or maybe just during special events like open houses. So I'll give you a few seconds here. Oh, it says that the panelists cannot vote on my end.
The attendees can vote.
Okay, great. All right. See if we have some results here. Okay, great. So I think this will be a really interesting discussion for most of you out here today. 58% saying no, and then the rest of it divided up into yes and kind of. And then the next poll, real quick, because I think this is very important for all of us to keep in mind. Does your institution regularly evaluate tours through visitor feedback? Let's give you about 10 seconds on that. All right, let's see what we have. Okay, very good. So about, 50-50 at least intending to do so, or you are currently and no, not quite yet, which is just fine, but I do encourage you to do some sort of either formal or informal evaluation process. Okay, we'll continue on here. So in order to obtain some knowledge of the plethora of practices already in place, part of my research for the benchmarking project was to anonymously visit 5 historic house museums across Ohio And these visits were pre-approved by staff at those institutions, a couple of whom are here on the call, representing those institutions on the call here. Sites were chosen to reflect a variety of sizes, both financially and human resource-wise, that also offered a diverse set of tour experiences. And then follow-up interviews were conducted with each of the institution's leadership to go over my findings and observations and to get behind the scenes look at operations. So the panel here with us today includes leadership staff at two of the institutions that I benchmarked, the Kelton House Museum and Garden in Piatt Castle. And then Melissa Karman has also agreed to speak with us today about the Sutliff Museum's own Ohio History funded, fund-supported, self-guided offering. So before we get started with the panel discussion, however, I want to just allow them a couple of moments to introduce themselves. So Melissa, you're up first.
Hello, everybody. My name is Melissa Karman. I am the director at the Sutliff Museum, located on the second floor of the Warren-Trumbull County Public Library in downtown Warren. I've been with the Sutliff Museum for about 6 years. I started off as an intern and worked my way up to director, and I do a little bit of everything. What you see in these pictures, this is pretty much our museum. Like I said, it's a small room. We're a small one-room museum focusing on the Sutliff family who lived in Warren and Trumbull County in the early 19th century and their work with the Underground Railroad. In a normal year, we usually welcome about 1,200 visitors, hold 2 lecture series, host 3 one-day bus trips, and offer a museum in a box program to schools and organizations. In 2019, the Sutliff Museum received a History Fund grant for the creation of a self-guided tour app. There are many services that are geared towards museums, though I found most of them were made for more larger museums. After a lot of research, I came across OnSell. After talking with a representative and telling them what I was looking for, I found out they offered a local and specialty plan that would offer everything I wanted to use and at a much lower cost. So the plan allowed us to offer 4 tours, which we would normally offer with a docent. The pages within the tours are equipped with images, audio, and sometimes a special video if it pertains to the subject. The plan includes a web-based version of the program, and for an additional setup fee, the program can be launched to the Apple and Google Play app stores. We opted for the extra platform as we had extra money from the grant. But the web-based version is nice because people don't have to wait for a download. Designing the app was pretty simple. As you can see here, their app builder is a user-friendly platform, especially those who like to work on a website. By using the widget drop-down box, you can easily choose the content you desire, click to add photos, audio, text, and a lot more. Then click and drag the content to where you want it to come on the page. And you can see how it will look on a cell phone by clicking the preview button in the upper left-hand corner. After about 5 months of research and 3 months of designing, the Sutliff Museum was ready to launch the app in November 2019, web-based and a native platform. Since November, we've seen 79 users on our native platforms, which were mostly Apple-based, and 154 users on the web-based app. Overall, our feedback has been great, but we still need to develop a short survey at the end of the tours. Even with these numbers, obviously we'd like to see more usage and hopefully more feedback so we can adapt the application to what our viewers would like to see more of. And you can download it today.
Hello, my name is Margaret Piatt, and I'm both the president and program director of Piatt Castle Mackachek. My professional training and experience are in the fields of museum education, interpretation, living history, and theater. And I worked as a staff member for multiple museums of different sizes on the East Coast for over 20 years, and spent another 8 years working as a consultant in those areas. Bracketing that professional experience, I've spent time here. This is a historic house museum near West Liberty. It's named Macacheek, which is a derivative of the Shawnee place name. It was built by my great-great-grandfather, and his son opened it up for tours. So the house was finished in 1871. It was opened for tours in 1912, and we switched over to a self-guided approach in 2004. A lot of visitors are really interested in my personal connection to the building, but I don't generally share that with them because I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about them. And that has everything to do with our approach to self-guided tours. So let me talk more about the visitor. Every group everybody who arrives is greeted in as warm and friendly as a manner as I can hire people to do. That is really important to me, that they be welcoming, that they help people feel comfortable, and that they give them an orientation which is both theoretical and practical. So they help them discover what can they do while they're in this museum. They check in with them throughout their time if possible, and they definitely do at the end. And I think that's what this picture is, in which the interpreter is answering some questions and talking to the visitors as they're about ready to leave. When they enter, they currently come through a small office and then into the library. And that's often where they're given an orientation to how they can experience the house. In the background, you see a portrait over the mantle. That's of Abram Piatt, who built the home. There is some biographical information about him in the stand just below. These little stands are very flexible. We have lots of them. We use them in different ways, and we change them all the time. The one with the wine color is always coded as being interpretive, helping to explain something about the objects, the people, excuse me, the space, or ideas. New this year, we added the ones that have the lighter color in the foreground, excuse me. And it's hard to see, but it has a floor plan that shows people where they are. People really seem to appreciate that. It is the place where we've put our COVID guidance about how to social distance. And what you can't see is that it says it's the library, and it also poses a large question for the visitors to think about related to their own lives and how it connects to their space. So in this case, it says, how do you learn? And it immediately opens up conversations that we learn in different ways at different time periods. Our entire approach is to use questions to invite visitors to think about not so much our family, but the idea of family history. So that is really our purpose. And we pose questions not only in the place exhibits, but also in the content exhibits that ask people to think about their own experiences, but then it answers it in terms of the Piatt family and, when possible, with the Shawnee people. So one is, why do people move? And it ends with, have you ever moved? It instantly brings up an opportunity for us to talk about a variety of different ways to think about taking that journey. Another question that's somewhat difficult is, has your family ever had to make a choice about keeping property? And that is key to our story, and one that people relate to very seriously. So I offer that, and I'll be glad to talk more about how these questions work. They're meant to be simple. They're meant to be participatory. We don't ask the people to tell us about their lives. We try to make it be so they can talk with each other, but they almost always end up telling us about their lives. As we go through the building, we always have had hands-on activities. We want to make it interactive, and I particularly want it to be fun for kids. This is one of the outdoor activities that's one of the most popular, and this family are playing games, and you can see that there is an interpretive board behind it, which not only tells them how to play the games, but it tells them the history of the games. So we're always trying to help them think back about the history of almost anything. A very difficult aspect this year is that we had to take away our hands-on activities. It bothered all of us who work here, and so one of our staff began experimenting with scavenger hunts. And she did really clever designs that appealed to kids, but she connected them back to the questions and the themes of the building. And then for bonus questions, she took them around on a tour of the outside. This shows a couple of kids and a dad looking at the doghouse, which is one of the most popular places. And there you can see there's an exhibit that says who's in the doghouse, and it shows 100 years of dogs who've lived there. So that's just one of the ways that we try to connect to people and help them realize that although this is somewhat of an unusual family, all families are interesting, every family is unique, and the concept of family history is universal.
Hi, I'm Sarah Richardt. I'm the director of the Kelton House Museum and Garden. And I'm actually the very new director of the Kelton House Museum and Garden. I just started here in July of 2020 in the midst of COVID and in the midst of changing everything. I came from Illinois at the Chicago area, worked there for about 25, or lived there for 25 years, worked in the museum field for about 13 of those 25 years. My career started in zoos and then morphed into museums. But so while I was there, I was the director of the Lombard Historical Society in the Sheldon Peck Homestead, which is an Underground Railroad site there. Wrote 2 books while I was there and did a fabulous exhibit on Sheldon Peck and his life and art. I also, the last thing I did before I left there to come here was to did a paper for the National Park Service about Seeking Charlie, which is really about searching for a freedom seeker with only a first name, no last name, and trying to find him through historic records and through oral history in the state of Illinois. So currently I'm at Kelton House. I've been there since July. It's been fascinating to start a job and open in the midst of COVID. So we've been changing the way we do things, of course, just like everybody else. And that includes how we change the audio tours. So we've been opening up new spaces such as the hallway on the right there, which has never been open to the public, but that way it creates a better flow for what we do. But the house is a Victorian house built in 1852. And it is also site on the Underground Railroad. But we also talk about, you know, beyond the Underground Railroad, what happened with the family who lived there. So gift shop and front parlor, typical for local history, but also we really focus on decorative arts and the home in that aspect. Finally, we talked to about 3,500 children per year. We're the only Underground Railroad site that's open to the public year round. So we have many school kids that come, of course, pre-COVID, and hopefully 2021, we'll see some numbers come back again, some children come back, because we really, truly miss that. Our audio tours started about, it was a process, started back in 2007, finally completed in 2013 through Museum Works in Dallas. So we worked with that. And it's a self-guided audio tour, which allowed us to expand our visitorship throughout the throughout the week without increasing staff, which of course with small museums, we all know those issues. So we use AudioWorks, which is a small audio device that you pick up. With COVID, of course, we only use it once per week, which is on Saturdays. The rest of the week, we have docents that do the tours throughout the week, but then on the weekend or on Saturdays only we use it, and that way it can be disinfected and used for the following week. With that audio tour as well, it comes with a booklet. So inside of it, it has a map of where you are, things that you're going to listen to, clear instructions, and things like that. So we're part of the Junior League of Columbus, and that's who we are, a community service project of the Junior League of Columbus, and that's who owns and operates our museum.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So I think we'll get started with some of the panel questions here. The first one I would like to have each of you address is the size of your institution, both human resource wise and budget wise, just to give kind of an overview for everyone out there. Margaret, would you be willing to start?
Sure. Our budget has been about $80,000 a year, although I don't know how that will change in the future. And that is in part because we used to have more property. And of course, this has been a challenging year. We have right now 5 part-time interpreters. They are seasonal, they're all paid. And we have 1 full-time assistant for program and operations, and we have 1 part-time archive assistant. And other than that, the family does all the rest of the work, and we don't take a salary.
Melissa?
At the Sutliff Museum, we have 2 part-time paid employees and 1 part-time docent and a lot of volunteers.
Sarah?
I'm the only paid, well, I'm the paid director, and I'm part-time, 25 hours per week. We have a whole team that comes with a junior league of marketing people and things like that, and docent coordinators. We have a volunteer docent team, as well as house managers that work our weddings that we do on the weekends, which is a very large income source for us.
Something I think is very important for all of us to consider is how do you prepare visitors for their museum experiences? Margaret, I know that this is of particular value to you, so would you mind starting?
Sure. I think it's because I come out of a background of having been an interpreter and a museum teacher. And so the idea of creating a meaningful relationship, I think, is an important part of going to a museum, or certainly can be. So I already did mention that we work to greet every visitor. When possible, we ask them a couple of questions to help them feel comfortable. And then I try to train the staff to be able to go from any statement to where they next want to lead the people. So they are developing a relationship, and they're also moving towards a direction that will help the visitor know better how to get the most out of the experience.
Thank you. Let's go to Sarah this time.
So to prepare, we've moved around the house. When I first started, people were a little unsure of where to go. So we now have clear guidance and signage of where to go into the house. So when they walk in, they immediately go to the gift shop, like we're Disney or something. So we walk into the gift shop, greeted by a person, of course, instead of sometimes it, you know, in other places it's just, oh, here's signage to pick up, but no, you're greeted by a human being. We go over the rules of the house, which can be fun, and including, you know, little signage that says the last person that sat on this chair is dead. Don't risk it. So, you know, we talk about the little signages, the cues in the house, you know, how to stay 6 feet away from me, don't touch things, it's hard to disinfect 180-year-old something. And then instructions on the audio tour. And in that room also, we give a history of the family, a brief history to start. And so they have a place to know where they're at and why they're here. And then they either go with the docent or go with their audio tour from there.
Melissa?
We have 1 way in, 1 way out at the Sutliff Museum. And as a visitor comes in, either myself, my assistant, or whoever is there greets the person, and we give them an overall history of why we are here and a little bit about the Sutliff family. And then we give them the option if they just want to walk around or if they would like to use our app, which we do have iPad stations around the museum, but are not in use right at this moment, but they can download the app if they want, or we can give them a short little tour.
Mm-hmm. So I think maybe a question on a lot of people's minds here, because they might be considering self-guided tours as well. Why did your particular museums turn to self-guided? And if you are, you know, you're all doing self-guided, but do any of you offer guided tours to supplement or in addition to as a regular offering?
We have guided tours as a regular offering, but only for groups of 20 or more. And we approach them in a couple of ways. Sometimes we have more staff all over the building, and so the people still can have the freedom of movement, which they really express great appreciation for. And then other times it is much more of a structured experience, and that tends to be more for school groups or groups studying a specific topic. And we work that all out with them before they come.
Sarah?
So we do, we have docent tours every Sunday. So, and those seem to be very popular. When people come on a different day of the week, they're like, oh, it's just an audio tour. But then they do the audio tour and they're very, very positive feedback that comes from it. But sometimes we do get the, oh, I thought we'd have a person question. But the reason we started it was to increase to 7 days a week. We wanted to be able to offer that. Since then, and that's why it was started initially without adding staff. It was a large investment to start it, about $20,000 to start the entire audio tour, the entire process with hiring actors and everything. But at that time, it has then allowed us for many years to use this and have that multiple day offering. With our staff size. But we do also offer special tours and Thursday night tours and ghost tours and Christmas tours that are all, those are not part of the audio tour, because of course the audio tour, it doesn't change for us. It is a very static piece of equipment. So for us, it's a difficult thing to change. So anything separate or different is a in-person tour.
Melissa, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that? Why you
No,
started the project?
Yeah, I already talked about it. Our app is mostly used for supplemental, a little bit of extra. It's not really made to be used on its own, but I guess it could. We offered it, we advertised it more when the museum closed due to COVID. As a way of visiting the museum when you are stuck at home.
I'm curious, for any of your institutions, before you enacted these self-guided experiences, did people just show up and ask, do I have to take a tour? Or can I just look around the house? Was that ever an issue or a request that you received?
Constantly. And occasionally now somebody says, you mean I don't get a guided tour? So I want to be honest. There are a few people who are a little disappointed, and there are people who came here when they were children, and that might have been 10 years ago, but sometimes it's 50 years ago. And they are sometimes a little disappointed that somebody isn't mentioning something that they remembered being mentioned. But I think that happens everywhere. And one of the reasons we really want someone, and if possible, more than one person in the building, is so that they can have those interactions and meet the needs of what people are feeling they're missing. I would say, though, most people express relief that they don't have a tour, which does not mean I don't still think tours are wonderful. But a lot of people, and one of the reasons we stopped doing them was they had become too programmed. And people seem to most appreciate being able to spend as long as they want in a specific area and being able to avoid things they're not as interested in. And I didn't mention before, but to help facilitate that, we have chairs, and now this year stools instead of chairs, located all throughout the building. And one of the orientation features is to encourage them to stay as long as they want, to sit down and just chat in the room if they want to, experience it as a home, or think of it more like you might think of as an art museum, where you can go where you want, when you want, and in whatever order you want. And sometimes people are really surprised by that, and then they seem to be pleased.
What has visitation been like for your institutions since you enacted these experiences?
Ours went up dramatically because we were able to then open up for 7 days a week. And so our numbers were, I think they went from 8,000 to 10,000. But a lot of that we have to remove is about 4,000 to 5,000 children per year, or 3,500 to 4,500 children per year coming for tours. So our for those. So that's also included in that overall number. This year, of course, my institutional knowledge is only back to July, since we opened July 8th, and everything is different. And then we didn't start using the audio tours again this year until we were able to safely clean and disinfect them, and that was about 2 weeks ago. We reintroduced them. So
that's interesting, because our experience is just the opposite, but I wouldn't say it was because of the nature of the guided versus self-guided tour. We went from 12,000 to 6,000 in that same decade. And that had mostly to do with the 3 counties around us put a moratorium on school visits. That was really crushing. And also the bus tour system just really dried up. And so those have affected us greatly. And we constantly have to figure out ways to draw more visitors in other ways. We have a lot of who you would call summer tourists. And then we also have a lot of more museum goers of different kinds. And we've only recently put on our website, facilitated self-guided tour. That's on our answering machine. We used to not even mention that there was a difference, which is why I don't think that was a factor in people not coming.
Melissa?
And yeah, it really didn't change our visitation once we launched the app. Yeah, it was there to kind of enhance your experience.
And I really think our increase was only because of the days of the week we were able to add.
That makes
So,
sense.
and I don't think the audio tour was the draw. It was that now we can be open 7 days and not have to rely, so heavily on the human being that we couldn't afford to pay.
Well, what about the visitor feedback? How has that changed? Or what has it been like?
People seem to like our app. We need to develop a better survey at the end of the tours, but other than that, by word of mouth, people like it.
We until this year had a comment book, and we have a lot of all of our hands-on activities, they didn't all give people opportunities to write or to draw, but many of them did. And so that became a kind of an ongoing way for knowing what people liked and what they didn't like. They're also extraordinarily open of telling the interpreters things that they think. And so we've relied heavily on interpreter feedback. Now that I have an office very close to where the tours begin, I hear the exchange between interpreters and visitors. And so a lot of my current feeling comes from the vocal tones that I hear. If I hear the interpreter sounding rote, they don't get as much reaction. If I hear them sounding conversational, they get more so. And I do have one interpreter who asks people how the experience was. And initially that made me a little bit nervous because I didn't like that he was maybe putting people on the spot. But he does it in such a warm and fun way, and they immediately begin telling him things and asking him more questions. So I would say that we have a pretty good finger on the pulse for visitor reaction, knowing both what they do and don't like. And what they don't like has nothing to do with the tour experience. It has to do with they want the building to be in better shape.
Fortunately, one thing that we have implemented is that most of the tours, and I could say I do most of the tours right now because of COVID, and a lot of our docents don't want to come back yet. They're not comfortable. So a lot of that task relies on me during the week, and then our volunteer docents on Sunday. But the overall talking to people and allowing them to come in and do a lot of things, we do make sure, or I make sure, and I've instructed everybody else that as they're leaving, say, how was your tour? And once they start to talk about it, and I say, make sure you share that to TripAdvisor, make sure you share that to Google. And so we have had a lot of increase in our online comments and experiences because of that spot of, it's nice for them to tell us, but it's also when you have a great site and a great facility, you want to make sure other people know about it as well. So that's been very it's been very great for the feedback, so we know about it, and my board knows about it, and the community knows about it, but then future visitors as well.
That makes sense.
How does accessibility play into your tours and programs? And do you find that one option tends to work better than another when addressing issues of either physical accessibility or, being able to hear and see the spaces? Melissa, do you have anything for that?
It's really easy to get around the museum. Everything's spread out. So if someone is in a wheelchair or has a walker, they're able to get around the museum easily. With the app and our iPad kiosks, we do have some audio on it, and we do have headphones that they can use if they need to. Right now they're not being used because of COVID. We haven't had them out and usable, but they are available if they need them. And then just making it with the app, they can make things bigger, make the pictures bigger, make the text bigger if they need to.
Margaret, do you have any?
Yeah, our space is easy to get around. It's ramped, the doors are wide, and we've arranged the collections and the exhibits to make it very easy for people to be in the rooms. So they're not just looking in a doorway, they're in the rooms. We don't have an elevator, so there is no accessibility to the second floor. For many years, we had a book of pictures so people could look at that. We do oftentimes talk to people about what's up there, and we are redoing this book for next year, and we're also launching a project on some type of 3D experience that would be for people with various types of needs. In terms of being able to see and hear, I really work hard with the staff on vocal skills, and we all took practice sessions on how to speak loudly and with articulation while wearing a mask. And they find that now they shout at their family members. But at any rate, that's important to us. And every time we write exhibit text, we make it a bigger and bigger font, which pretty much grows out of the fact that I can't read things that are small anymore. So it made me understand that even the standard is not good enough for lots of people.
Mm-hmm. So at the Oberlin Heritage Center, again, this has been at the forefront. We operate mostly with guided tours, but there have been a couple of issues that have, we wanted to address. I think one of the bigger ones was the security for, all the things that you have to take into consideration with self-guided tours. So could each of you speak to the security of your museums, in terms of collections, the buildings themselves, the visitors and the volunteers and staff that are there?
Sure, I can start with that a little bit. And I'm not sure, I know in the whole history of what we've, when we've been doing these tours, I do know that there was a spoon that disappeared. and it was, one of those cute little, for a salt cellar, those itty bitty little tiny spoons. So different approaches have been taken for that. Of course, our house manager who's there on Saturday giving out the tours, she's not sitting in one place. She's wandering and asking, hey, do you need anything? Is everything? And some of that is absolutely customer service, and some of that is also just so the visitor knows that we're there. And we're not standing there watching them in the doorway. We do use a lot of fishing line. So items that are small are now tied together to a larger item, and eventually tied to the handle of the dresser. When I first started working there, I didn't know that, and I went to move something and I pulled everything off the dresser. Thankfully, none of it was glass. But, then of course we have, with our alarm system, our more valuable items, we do have alarmed and ready to go to, if certain cabinets were open that have very expensive silver in them, those are alarmed, and certain items that are just sitting out also have they're wired and magnetized. So those, we do have security on those items. And basically it's anything small enough to go in your pocket. that we make sure that, or in a bag. So yeah, there is a lot of faith involved. There's a lot of hope that we're, but also, we do make as many precautions as we can, and just walking the building when people are there is also, and being visible yourself. It's helpful. So that's what we do for security.
We do very similar, although I'm totally inspired by the fishing line idea. So we're going to start that, right? But initially we just tried to make it so that you couldn't get to anything that was small, although that wasn't always easy to manage. And yet I can say that we've done this now for almost 20 years, and we've really only lost one object, and that object was in an enclosed case, and somebody came in with a tool prepared to steal it. So it's bad that we didn't catch that person. But that's the only thing that we have lost. Initially, you could get up close to some pieces of furniture that had doors or drawers on them. And part of our orientation was to ask people to please not open doors and drawers. And then that seemed to maybe just invite them to do so. It had more to do with them trying to not open the door that went to the basement or things like that. And so we started putting signs in the drawers that say, "We asked you please to not open the drawer." And occasionally you hear somebody laugh and they opened the drawer, and it's actually really helped in trying to encourage them to use good behavior. And then I think ultimately it's again watching people and paying attention.
Yeah, and at the Sutliff Museum in the almost 50 years that we've been open, as far as I know, we've only had one thing that was stolen. It was a small ring a couple years ago. After that happened, we had cameras installed in the room to keep an eye on things, plus staff is up and walking around, and most of our smaller objects are behind glass. Anything else, like large items that are a little bit heavier, can stay out and hopefully not be touched. But we do have the select few things that do get touched from now and then.
Well, I meant to say that when we reorganized for COVID, we actually changed a little bit our barriers, which are pretty invisible looking by purpose, but they do deter most people. And that has helped too, I think. And people don't seem to be bothered by that because they understand that they shouldn't get close to the antiques and they shouldn't touch them.
Thank you. I have just basically one last question for each of you, because I want to allow some time. We seem to have some questions in the Q&A that I would like for us to get to. But just very briefly, again, you were chosen for the variety of sizes, but you all implement a very unique style for both your guided tours and your self-guided experiences. And so I want you to address both, the pros and the cons. So could each of you speak to the biggest opportunity and also the biggest limitation for your particular method? Melissa, could we start with you this time?
Yeah, I really liked the fact that we went with an app. We wanted to appeal to a younger audience, and hopefully with the app, we're able to do that. It also makes it easier to utilize it when we go out to do some outreach, because we can say, hey, you can visit this app and see what the Sutliff Museum has to offer. And it is actually really easy to change. If you have any experience with changing a website, doing things on Facebook or Instagram, you can really use the on-sale platform. So it makes it easier if you need to change things around to go in and say, okay, I need to change this in the app, and then hit publish and everything's changed. Mm-hmm. So it's actually been a lot of fun to use.
Great, thank you. I think I want to go to Sarah next, because you also implement a form of technology, but sure. I know you have a different experience with it.
Yeah, I think the opportunity to be able to be flexible in what we do is really important. I don't have that panic of, oh my gosh, I don't have a docent today. But we can give the visitor a very quality experience. The audio tour is extremely high quality. It's done with professional actors. It's done with, and I can say this because I didn't do it, so I can boast about this as much as I want because I wasn't the creator of this, but it's very user friendly. You can say, okay, I want to learn about this room. And then it has all these parts of it to learn more about the Duncan 5 table, press number 2, to learn more about, so you can vary the amount of time you spend in a room and very personalize your experience while you're in it using it. The problem is, for me as the director, I can't personalize it currently. So we have a 7-year-old or 7 to 10-year-old audio that's fabulous and wonderful and this great quality. But I can't move a piece of furniture in some cases because of it's on the audio. So I do have a little now disclaimer. Some of the items that you may see may have been moved to the next room or maybe temporarily off exhibit. So I have to put a little bit of signage out when they're talking about something and it's physically not there, or put a reproduction of something. But that's kind of the biggest problem with the system that we've gone to, is that if we want to change anything, it costs us money to go through Museum Works. And that is not necessarily in my COVID budget at this point to redo the audio tours. And some things after 7 years, it's something I truthfully, I wouldn't say now. And so that I kind of cringe, go, really, did they say that? And in that way, it's not horribly offensive or anything, of course, or else I wouldn't use them at all. But it's just something I would think differently 10 years later if I would have said that. But, and so that's the biggest downside, is the lack. So Melissa has the ability to change things and we don't, but holy cow, it's a great product. So.
Margaret?
I would say we have 2 disadvantages. One, as a result of the self-guided tour, is that people might want to know more about something, but they don't remember they wanted to ask that by the time they see the staff person again. And I think that is an issue that we have hoped in the future we could address through technology. So I would say that is the second, is that we don't have any technology. And participating in this has been very helpful to me, because listening to each of you talk about your advantages and disadvantages is going to help guide us as we begin to move into that direction. And you also asked about, I can't remember if you said the greatest strength or asset.
Opportunity.
Opportunity. I think giving visitors a chance to talk about their own lives, making it a conversation rather than, and interactive rather than passive. Now, you could say that opportunity existed before, but the trouble with a guided tour is you have to keep moving. And so I think the limitation to the guided tour was that it didn't always offer flexibility for different kinds of learners and different interest levels. And people very, very much understood they couldn't stop and go on about their own particular interest. And this now takes that away, and people can do that, and they can think about how it affects their own lives. And it's much more of a humanities experience now.
Thank you. I do want to get to some of the Q&A points, because there are some really interesting questions here. The first one's from Leslie Wagner. She asks, they ask, for the self-guided tours, did you have to rearrange the rooms for visitor accessibility and visitor restrictions? Kind of addressed it a little bit, but is there anything you want to add to that?
Yes, we did. And coming from the world of theater, that just feels good to me. I think rearranging frequently for all kinds of reasons, including your better understanding of the history, is a good thing to do.
Perfect. Thank you. Anybody else have anything they'd like to contribute?
Ours was not it. The house was very stationary for about 15 years, and items did not move. I think I've rearranged the furniture 3 times since July 1. So, and maybe that's me, and maybe that's COVID, and maybe that's just because. But yeah, with different flow patterns and things, I've rearranged things all the time. But that had very little to do with the audio tour. And in fact, most of the time, once we added that self-guided aspect, we couldn't rearrange.
Yeah. And there are some things we can't move. So there's some rearrangement that can't happen.
Yeah.
Caroline asks, for signage, for your activities, did you collaborate with any other local organizations such as, other historical societies, any university students, and so on? And if not, why not?
We have college interns almost all the time. And yeah, and some have worked on labeling and signs. Some more recently have done that. We also collaborate with every nonprofit in our county, but that doesn't actually really address the issue of signs either. So I'm not really sure how those two connect, but I certainly believe in collaboration, and I'll try it whenever possible.
Our script was written by an entire education committee. It wasn't one person in-house. I'm not sure, since I wasn't there then, if it was with different universities. I believe part of this was a grant from the Ohio History Fund back in 2013, I think.
Andy will tell you.
From what I recall with, current Ohio History Fund information. But so I think there was some things that, so there was a lot of collaboration in order to get a really good product and really good research that went into it.
Oh, okay, yes, and I realized what I didn't understand. Thank you for helping me understand that. We have worked on a lot of different projects, many of them sponsored by the Ohio Humanities, which enables us to work with scholars to refine our historical content. That's really important in a place that kind of became a mom and pop history museum for 100 years. So that kind of collaboration is really helpful.
How long, and I think this is going to greatly vary for all of us here, how long start to finish did it take for you to develop and implement a self-guided tour?
Ours was like a 2-year process.
Melissa?
With ours being with the History Fund, I had about 5 months of research and 3 months of developing the app.
Yeah, we are closed in the winter time, so we make changes every winter. And I do recall making the decision in December, and we were ready to go in April. But again, we didn't have the guideline of technology that made a difference. So I think we could have done it in a month.
And I think the lesson is also having something that you can revisit and change and challenge, and is sustainable for the long term. Caroline also has some great questions today. What is next for our organizations? Future projects, any ideas that are kind of on the table, what we're considering? I'll start off with this one. So at the Oberlin Heritage Center, the study was to help inform us, but also to share what we found out with all of you. And we were going to start implementing some content for self-guided experiences in April. That did not happen for obvious reasons now. So just kind of reworking with that content and figuring out what would be possible when we are able to incorporate more visitors into the Historic House Museum, and also maybe eventually reincorporate some hands-on experiences as well.
We're looking into new kinds of technology, as I already mentioned. We have a plan to actually redesign all of our exhibits, even though we like our format very much. They are a combination of old and less old, and so we want to revitalize them. And we have a big project coming on about our probably most important object, which is a cabinet of curiosities that has been very underinterpreted because of its complexity. And so that's become a top priority.
Our future is, there's two major things, one with technology, one without. In my previous job, we were able to do a documentary that was a great way to, in a 37-minute long format, get it to schools and things So that's the self-guided portion. The guided portion, and partially self-guided, is a new interpretive exhibit coming up for us that will be beyond the Underground Railroad. We talk a lot about African-American life up until 1865, and then from there there's not a lot of interpretation in the house, and so we're talking beyond the Underground Road and the African American experience in the Kelton House. So that's our next, and again, moving furniture, and we'll have to take out a number of the hallway will no longer be part of the self-guided tour because it'll be part of the permanent exhibit.
Melissa, did you have anything?
We are working on a driving tour of Underground Railroad sites in Trumbull County. I am currently working on the audio for that. The visual part of it is already available, but there's not a whole lot of information right now. But it does give us the option of doing GPS coordinates that will give you directions to each of the sites in Trumbull County.
Melissa, you also have a question.
Yeah, I'm typing it right now.
Okay. I think there's also another question for you in the box.
Yep.
Too, but I think
Melissa, you're busy.
yeah,
I know.
I'm curious about also. Well, I think that's all we have. I just wanted to quickly thank some of the institutions that were, agreed to be benchmarked during this process. It was just really nice to see the plethora of options and, creative solutions organizations have undertook to address the visitor needs and to address organizational budget and staffing needs as well. Also, again, thank you to the Ohio History Fund. Obviously, you heard a lot of the projects here today were funded by that and also by the Ohio Humanities. And then if you need to contact any of us, feel free to shoot us an email here. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you for coordinating us.
As a reminder, this will be recorded, so you can always check back later and see what you missed. So thanks for attending.